Every time a truck moves, a factory fires up, or a plane takes off in America, it's running on a silent agreement almost no one voted for.
But very importantly, tomorrow tariffs 25% on Canada.
President Trump again imposed unjustified tariffs on our nation, and our response to these latest tariffs is to fight.
The unbreakable energy link with Canada, 4.3 million barrels, every single day, quietly flowing from Canadian oil sands into American refineries. No headlines, no fanfare, just the heartbeat of the US economy. But in early 2025, that heartbeat skipped because one line, barely noticed, changed everything.
Starting tomorrow, the United States will implement reciprocal tariffs on other nations. It's been a long time since we even thought of that.
Tariffs, 25% on Canada. Spoken by Trump, not screamed, not broadcast. But the oil markets heard it loud and clear. And Canada hinted it might do the unthinkable, cut the oil. It didn't start as a crisis. It started as a trade war. Trump, newly re-elected, launched sweeping tariffs against allies and rivals alike. 25% on most Canadian imports. But for Canadian oil, only 10%. Why pull the punch? Because US refineries depend on Canadian crude. Not Texas sweet, not Saudi light, Canadian heavy crude. And here's the thing, the machines are built for it. You can't just swap oils. That's not how chemistry works. Canada, at first, responded with routine retaliations. Wheat, dairy, textbook stuff. But then, Canada's foreign minister dropped a line. Of course there's the oil. A whisper, a warning. And markets reacted like it was a siren. Oil prices spiked. US refineries scrambled to hoard Canadian barrels. Energy traders knew what most Americans didn't. You don't threaten oil, not in an election year. Calls flooded the White House. The American Petroleum Institute issued red alerts. Behind the scenes, refinery CEOs were freaking out. Because this wasn't just economic tension, it was a countdown. A Canadian cutoff would spike US gas prices by up to 50% within weeks. It would shatter approval ratings, sink campaigns, trigger panic, and the US Strategic Petroleum Reserve, a temporary fix. Barely 90 days of partial coverage. Pipelines don't reverse, machines don't adapt, there is no backup. What's worse, even if the US wanted to shift away, it's already boxed itself in. The pipeline network, refinery layout, even long-term supply contracts, all of it was built around the assumption that Canadian crude flows freely. Decades of infrastructure spending didn't just create reliance, it created a trap. American refineries are calibrated for the density and sulfur profile of Canadian oil. Changing inputs isn't like flipping a switch. It takes billions in retrofits and years of downtime. And this isn't just an energy issue. It's national security. It's food prices, airline stability, supply chains. Without Canada, the US doesn't just face an energy hiccup. It faces a systemic shock. Canada escalated its tone. At CERAWeek, one of the world's top energy summits, Canada's energy minister didn't threaten. He hinted, "We have options." That's all it took. Markets collapsed the spread between Western Canadian Select and WTI. Panic rippled through the system, because for decades, Canadian oil was sacred, unspoken, off limits. Now, that line had been crossed, not with force, with suggestion. But here's the twist, Canada couldn't actually afford to shut off the taps either. 97% of its oil exports go to one place, the US, no ships, no ports. No plan B, just pipes going south. And Alberta, the province that produces 80% of Canada's oil, they weren't on board. Premier Danielle Smith flat out said, "Shutting off oil is unacceptable. Alberta's economy depends on those barrels moving." So, the bluff? It risked blowing up Canada from the inside. One wrong move, and Ottawa would be torching its own house just to spook the neighbors. Then it got political. Fast. Prime Minister Trudeau resigned, replaced by Mark Carney, a former central banker. Cold, calculated, respected. Carney didn't speak in political sound bites. He spoke in asterisk market signals. We are prepared to do things we haven't imagined before. That bluff, suddenly credible. And just like that, Washington changed its tune. In April, Trump launched a new round of tariffs. Europe, China, technology. But Canada? Not mentioned. Quietly exempt, no press conference, no spin, just gone. Because behind closed doors, the US had blinked. The oil kept flowing. Gas prices rose, but just a little. Enough to sting, not to panic. But something had changed. The US realized energy independence? It was a myth, a talking point. And Canada? They learned their hand had weight, not forever, but for a moment, it mattered. The crisis ended before it exploded, but the illusion didn't survive. Because now, the world knows. Even the politest countries have pressure points. And America? It has addictions. Ones it can't afford to lose. The pipes kept humming. But the message was clear. This system only works until it doesn't. You weren't supposed to know any of this, but now you do. And you can't unsee how power actually moves. Subscribe. Not because we asked, because the next story like this, you'll want to already know.